In this tutorial, we're taking a look at how to make this character falling animation feel faster and more dynamic through compositing in After Effects. We'll be adding some motion blur, create some action lines. I'll show you how to integrate your character into the scene with some lighting techniques, and then we'll finish it all off with some cinematic polish. Alright, let's take a look at our animation. We can tell our character is falling, but right now she feels a little floaty and slow. Let's boost that sense of speed. Head over to your effects and presets and type in CC Radial Blur. Make sure the type is set to fading zoom and crank the amount up to around 250. Now we're going to lose a little bit of detail, but that's okay. Next, reposition the center point of your blur so it lines up with our direction of action. Since our buildings are zooming away and to the right, we want the blur to match that direction. Now we're going to create some action lines. This is something used in animation all the time to convey speed. First, let's start by making a new solid. We want the width to be 2000 and the height should be double, so we're going to make that 4000. Then we'll pre-comp that, name it Action Lines, and jump into that comp by double-clicking. Rotate the solid 90 degrees and scale it way up about 400%. Now we're going to add a fractal noise to this layer. Set the fractal type to dynamic, boost the contrast to 500, drop the brightness to -150, then toggle down the transform settings. Uncheck uniform scaling. We want to set the scale width to 2000 and set the scale height to 10. This will give us the streaky lines that we're looking for. To animate these lines, we're going to adjust the offset turbulence. At the start of the shot, set a keyframe. We see that the X value is 1000, then jump to the end of the shot. We want to drop that down to -4000. Now that we've got those lines flying upward, we want to create a bit of a fall off so it looks like our lines fade out as they get further away from the action. For this, double-click the rectangle mask tool on your solid. Bring the top edge of the mask down to about a quarter of the comp and feather it like crazy, and say 500. Finally, add a white solid, same size as the comp. For this layer, we're going to set the track matte to our fractal comp and make sure that the Luma matte toggle is checked. This gives us a clean alpha to drop into the main comp. Let's hop back and solo the action lines. Add a CC cylinder effect and set the rotation X to -90. When we play this back, you can see we have a nice tunnel animation, but we have to get that center area to match up with our line of action. So let's scale this layer up to 300% and drop the cylinder radius to 50. Line up the center point of this layer to match our character's origin. Change the rotation order to be X, Y, Z, and adjust the Y direction a few degrees to match the path our character is falling. To finish this up, drop a fill effect, set it to white, and reduce the layer opacity to around 50%. Now it looks like she's falling pretty fast. While we're here, let's add some camera shake to sell the impact as she passes the camera. Create a null object and place it near the corner where she exits the frame. We're going to name it Camera Shake. We're going to parent the rest of our layers to that null. Now we're going to animate the null position along the y-axis every 2 frames. Set the first keyframe, then shift over 2 frames. Drop it down a few clicks, and shift over 2 more frames, then up past the original position. Shift over and drop it down again. Don't forget to space out your keyframes. Shift over again, and up. Take the last keyframe and slide it to the end. Now we can select all the keyframes and set them to easy ease. It's a small detail, but it really makes it feel like the camera is reacting to our character. Now let's integrate our character into the scene a little more naturally. We're going to open our character comp and rename the animation layer Base. We're going to duplicate this twice. We're going to name this one Offset, and we're going to name this one Shadow. For our shadow layer, we're going to take a fill effect and set the color to a deep blue. Next, set the track matte to be the offset layer, then invert it. Adjust the offset layer slightly down and to the left, revealing the shadow layer. We want it to look like the city lights are illuminating her from the bottom left, so a shadow layer would be on her top right. Head to the effects and presets and type in Fast Box Blur. Drop that on the offset layer, then set it to around 15, just to soften the shadow edge a bit. Now we're going to set the shadow layer blend mode to multiply. Now let's take this a little bit further. Select the offset layer. At the start, add a keyframe and set it to around 30%. Then jump to the end and set another keyframe at 100%. If we hop back in the main comp, we can see this gives the illusion that she starts off in shadow and is being lit as she gets closer to the lights from the city. One more thing we can do is add a directional blur on our character as she exits frame. Go to your effects and presets, grab the directional blur, drop that on our character, and go to the last frame as she exits. We're going to set the blur to about 20, and we want to adjust the direction to match our line of action. Add a keyframe there and go back a few frames and set another keyframe to 0. Now it looks like she's picking up speed as she passes the camera. Time to finish up by adding some color adjustments in film grain to get a more cinematic look. We're going to take our main comp and drag it here to create a new comp. We'll call this render comp. Set the width and height to 1920 by 1080. This is just easier to manage for final export. Then right click on our comp layer, go up to transform and select fit to comp width. Next, we're going to add a few adjustment layers. We'll call the first one grain, then vignette, and the last one color correction. For the grain layer, go to the effects and presets and type in add grain. We want to set the view to final output. Then we're going to use one of the presets to keep it easy. Select Kodak SFX 200T. This gives us a nice analog look. Select the vignette layer, then go to your ellipse tool. Double-click that, and you'll get a nice oval around the whole layer. Head to your effects and presets and select a level effect. For our mask, we want to set it to invert and feather it to about 250. We want to crank the black input here. This is looking pretty good, a value close to 4,000. Let's toggle the layer on and off to see the difference. I think if we drop the layer opacity around 65, that would give us a nice subtle vignette, as if we're using a real camera. Next, select the color correction layer. We want to add Lumetri color. We'll just play around here a bit. Again, this is very subjective, but we're going for a sci-fi look, so we want to cool things down a bit. Let's set the temperature to around -25. Let's also bump the contrast to 25. Actually, let's push it to 50. Then select our highlights, drop them to -25, and drop our shadows to -15. Finally, we'll up the black value to 25 as well. If we solo our original comp, we can see that it was a little washed out by comparison. So by adding these layers, we achieve a more sci-fi and cinematic look. When compared to the original animation, you can see how much more dynamic it feels now. We can really feel the action and the speed. Obviously, a lot of these choices are stylistic. What matters most is what your project is trying to achieve story-wise and what you want your audience to feel when they watch. But hopefully, these techniques will give you some new tools to experiment with. If you found this helpful, let me know. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your questions or whatever you're working on. Catch you in the next one.